Media challenges had some sort of redeeming social value, like the ice bucket challenge. Anyone? Now kids are eating detergent. In this case, Tide Pods. We hope our kids will grow up to be smart, well-adjusted adults. Then comes news that teenagers are eating the colorful detergent packets and are uploading videos on their social media platforms. Not sure if they're uploading the vomiting and the foaming at the mouth as they pass out and get rushed to the hospital. Joining us for more to try to understand this is clinical psychologist Eddie Rainier and Raymar Tirado of the Sarasota Underground. And Raymar, let me start with you. How do these things start?
So they're not real sure how this one started, but there was a Tide challenge where Tide actually challenged you to put a stain on your clothes that they might be able to help you get out. And then the Onion ran an article saying something about, I'm going to eat one of these, you know, and it was a satire article, The Onion. Yeah. And so the way our social media structure is set up, you don't know if that's where it starts. We reward the wrong type of behavior, right? So we reward silly, stupid things that catch people's attention. And so when you do something like this and it goes viral, it causes a daisy chain. And so we don't really know what's real news, what's not, you know, and it becomes an interesting situation when you have this tool to reach millions and millions of people almost instantly, and it starts creating these trends that are moving faster than we can keep up with.
Have there been other challenges like this that have been, in a similar way, dangerous?
I don't think, not that I can think of in this context. Typically the stuff you see sharing is feel good, again, like you said, raising money, ALS, you know, the ice bucket challenge, whatever, these different things, or at least funny, right, or fitness motivated or something.
Well, there was a cinnamon challenge that was...
Oh, yeah, but still nobody's really dying from the cinnamon, right? It's like painful, it's like the drinking a gallon of milk in under a minute or whatever that is, right? You might throw up, but nobody's gonna die. And so when you see something like this proliferate, you just wonder, like, what are they thinking? Because it's not like 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds crawling into their laundry cabinet and doing this accidentally, right? This is teens, this is adolescents who, at some level, you would think would know better than to just eat these things.
Well, that's a perfect segue to you, Doctor. You know, a lot of us did the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. It was a thing for a good cause. But obviously, the idea of eating Tide Pods, detergent, you know, anybody would know that that's a dangerous thing to do. So what motivates an adolescent, a teenager, to do something that is so obviously dangerous?
Well, I think that the more our kids are connected to the internet, the more friends they have online, the more lonely they are, and the more unhappy they are, the more depressed they are. Depressed people seek to do dangerous things to themselves. And so as they're isolated but they have all these friends, they're constantly on their phones, there is this sense I can do something outrageous. Maybe that will give me relief. Maybe that will give me more friends. Maybe somebody will discover who I am.
Right, but it's not only depressed young people who are doing this.
It's an attention crave.
It's an attention crave, yeah.
It's because, again, it goes back to the reward structure set up, right? You got Kim Kardashian, you got, you know, these celebrities that become celebrities for either being attractive or for doing something dumb or for releasing a sex tape or for somehow, again, violating...
Our role models are all these people do crazy, crazy things. Online as well as on TV.
Right, my producer just said in my ear that the jackass, stuff that you see both online and on TV, yeah. If anybody is, I'm sorry, stupid enough to watch it, they see a bunch of morons doing obviously dangerous things and people getting hurt.
To a certain extent, but this is where I think, you know, because again, if you get your news from Stephen Colbert and you understand the news, then you can understand the funny and the satire. But if you just get your news from Stephen Colbert and you don't understand like the political context, you may just take his satire as the news. Again, you may take The Onion as the news and not understand this thing because you're just reading a headline, because you're just playing on the surface. And so it goes to a deeper level of our media, of the information distribution, the way we're building our societal structure.
Right.
I think we're missing...
We have to take a quick break. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the Tide Pod Challenge right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the Tide Pod Challenge. And joining us for more are clinical psychologist Eddie Rainier and Raymar Tirado of the Sarasota Underground. And Doctor, let me start with you. You were saying in the break, these kinds of challenges, kind of foolish teenage pranks have always been around, but it's different today, isn't it?
It's different because the speed by which we can take someone's prank and put it into everybody's home, and it looks cool. So the 20s kid used to stand on the hood of a car while his friends drove it very fast, suddenly it can be imitated by hundreds of kids because they see it on the same time it's happening. So this is nothing new. It's just that how fast things can get to us. And something as dangerous as a Tide Pod can cause massive damage to kids, and it can all happen so fast we have no control over it.
Raymond, what responsibility do social media platforms, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or anything else, have to not let these videos go and stay online?
The problem is they have a huge responsibility, first of all, but it goes against their business model to stop content from proliferating, especially viral content, because it draws you to your feed, and that allows them to sell more advertising to you or to advertisers and to put the message.
So where is the line? I mean, we talked about some of those stupid stunts like the Jackass videos.
But that was marketing, right? That's MTV, just marketing at scale. That's a different type of marketing.
So where's the line between doing that kind of dangerous prank and then something like this, basically ingesting poison?
I don't know how you draw the line. Like, I really think what we're seeing here is we're seeing a shift in society in the way that we're being bombarded with the amount of information. We haven't evolved to take in all of these inputs. And so we're still trying to figure out at scale, how is it that we deal with this virus called technology? And so if you think about it, we're like a caterpillar building a cocoon. In 100 years, we're going to come out as a completely different species. This different idea of who we are, how we interact, all this stuff. And we just can't see it right now, that we're going into this phase where things are going to change so fast where we don't really understand how these things are happening. And part of that is these trends that proliferate, and we seem to not be able to understand them, but it is a symptom of this growing pain that we're seeing, this information proliferation, this whole societal structure we're building.
So, Doctor, you have a whole lot of parents watching this right now, waiting for me to ask you, how should you talk to your children about this?
Well, a wonderful question, because you know what? There was a time we were responsible for ourselves, and we've gotten away from that. We're raising our kids in a bubble. We don't let them get hurt. We watch everything they do, everything they see. We want to hover them, over everything. And what that does, it takes responsibility of taking care of myself to mom taking care of me, government taking care of me, someone else taking care of me. So then I can take any kind of risk that I want, because I don't need to worry, because my dad will come, my mom will come, my cousin will come, the teacher will come to save me. And the world just doesn't work that way.
And I think it gets much worse before it gets better. Like, it gets much worse as we start seeing VR creep up, as we start seeing people immerse themselves into these worlds that we're going to build. They're going to become indistinguishable from the real world. And you will see people jump into these worlds, and they will be able to take those risks with impunity, right? And so then those lines start becoming even more blurred as you see us jump into these just...
So I can't tell you how many times I have said to my son when he goes out at night, don't do anything stupid. I would imagine that doesn't cover it.
No, my mother used to say, if I had a friend who wanted to jump off a cliff, would I jump off too? Well, in my day, I wouldn't, because my mother had that discussion with me. But today, the kids would.
Well, yeah, because now they got a GoPro and they can record it, and it looks cool, and it might go viral on YouTube.
So, is there something that we should be talking to our kids about?
You know, more than talk, we need to show. We need to take away the bubble. We need to let them experience. Let them. What's wrong with scraping your knee? What's wrong if a kid does something that causes them some pain, some discomfort? Maybe that's when we talk with them and say, how did that happen to you? Rather than to rush and find someone else to blame for it and take the oneness off of them into something else.
What I'm thinking about right now is in our schools, very often that we have programs where police in the DARE program will pull up a vehicle that was mangled in a drunk driving crash as a way to try to educate kids about the real life consequences of drunk driving. In other cases, they have Scared Straight, where they show kids what a jail cell is actually like when the door is locked, as a way of showing kids what to do. Is there anything...
You could argue the effectiveness of any of that stuff. Like, look at Steve Jobs. He restricted usage for his kids' digital devices, right? Like, you just don't get to use them. If you look at a lot of the people in Silicon Valley, a lot of the big money tech people, they're sending their kids to schools that are very low tech. They're very hands-on. Childs at early ages require that social stimulation. These devices are acting very much like drugs and other psychoactive substances. That's how they impact the brain. And so to them, they become these addictions, right? And so you have these kids that this is all they do, this is all they know. They walk up to pictures and pieces of glass and they start swiping, expecting the images to move, you know?
Well, it was not long ago where I did stories about a lot of schools who were actually requiring kids to have iPads there to do their classwork on and take home at night. I mean, do we have to rethink the technological tools that we are giving our kids to do?
Absolutely. We need to give them vacations from the technology. And we need to get kids, the best person who can protect a kid is that kid. No matter how much of a hovercraft parent we are, the best person to protect that kid is them. And they can protect themselves if they understand dangers. If we take the dangers away, we don't let them understand it, how can they protect themselves from it?
Well, and we have to quit manipulating each other at scale. We have to quit as businesses using every information data point as a sales trigger, right? And so that's what is driving all this, right? There's lots of ad revenue to be had through all these mechanisms. That's why you're seeing all this stuff proliferate. And so really we have to start thinking about what we're going to do as we move forward at an institutional level to start saying, you know, you can't spy on me to sell me stuff. You can't manipulate me with these media games.
Our social media platforms have not been real good the last few years in terms of policing themselves, in terms of content.
They never knew. You could never have known, and maybe at a certain level, after a certain level they did, because they experiment with people's emotions at scale. But you know, when they set out, like, you don't know what you're going to start when you start connecting people like this, right? When they started the internet, they didn't know it was going to evolve into this in 20, 30 years.
Doctor, how often do you have parents and kids coming into your practice with this kind of problem in terms of they saw something, whether it was online or their friends are doing it, and they're getting themselves into trouble that they don't quite know how to get themselves out of?
That happens on a daily basis, but that's not the reason they come in. They come in because the parents lost control, because that kid's listening to social media and has 5,000 friends who are giving them advice. And so the parent comes in because they're having troubles making that kid comply. And when that kid comes in and then they're talking to me, they pull out their cell phone and they're spending the entire time with the cell phone, I take the cell phone away. Then the kid gets upset. And they'll tell the parents, I don't want to come back because he took my cell phone away.
Well, and you can't dismiss that, right? You can't dismiss the fact that parents ultimately have a responsibility for their children, and it seems like we've, like you alluded to earlier, we've given that responsibility up to the state, to the schools, to whatever other institution we could, but it really is the parents.
We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Doctor, you were basically saying to us that parents somehow should not stop their youngsters from getting hurt in some ways. It's important for young people to realize that they can get hurt, they could experience failure and so forth. But again, where is the line between...
Eating Tide Pods is a line.
Yes, that's the question.
It's a line.
So what do you do?
Well, I think we have to talk to our kids, but also ultimately they have to take responsibility for themselves. And we have to allow them to take responsibility when they're young, when the consequences are small, and so that when they get older, they can take more reasonable risk because they'll understand that there are consequences to their behavior. When we take the consequences away when they're little, they don't learn it when they're older, so they're older, then they do things that are really inherently dangerous and damaging. So the problem is that we're too much overprotective when they're young, so they don't experience anything, and then when they're older, we can't protect them anymore.
And Raymond, we talked about the fact that a lot of these social media platforms are not policing themselves. I would imagine when it comes to this, it would be very hard for government to step in and do anything about it.
You start opening the door to censorship discussions, First Amendment, right? So who censors, how, what's the threshold for that, right? So that's a whole other discussion you start having when you start talking about any of that. And so again, there's so multifaceted any of these things.
And then there are people out there saying that we are making the situation worse by even having a show like this, talking about it and showing what kids are doing.
Sure. You could make that argument. I mean, I think it's, in this instance, it's a silly argument. I mean, I've seen that argument in other places. But to be honest, like we're headed towards a hard world, and to expect parents to be able to understand what that world looks like and prepare their children is tough, let alone having to navigate all these social waters.
Okay.
So
We'll have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you very much. But
Cool.
before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on Christian support for President Trump. Despite 2 failed marriages, numerous sexual harassment allegations, bragging about his mistreatment of women, an alleged affair with a porn star, and vulgar language, he can still do no wrong in the eyes of many Christians. And we went to Facebook, and here is what some of you have to say. Cheryl says, I don't judge President Trump or am giving him a pass. I am thankful he is a true American patriot and is doing the best to truly make America a great country again. Gary says, every time a Republican does something reprehensible, evangelicals give them a pass. Democrats don't get the same forgiveness. Curious? No. And Minister Roger Fritz of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota says, I believe that the duty of both religious and political leaders is to model personal virtue. In 1998, I preached a sermon calling for President Clinton to resign because of his adultery. 20 years later, I am making the same request of President Trump. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired, just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank both our guests for being here tonight, clinical psychologist Eddie Rainier and Raymar Torado of Sarasota Underground.